Can the Celtics trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo? Sort of. There's a way. I'll explain how. And can the Celtics contend without fully rebuilding? It's all right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Beantown, be ever ready. It's the C's. Who else could it be? What they gon' say now? Screaming like JT Karalis. Recap the madness every game, every practice. Prime time, Depp and D White on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising business, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day, and I got you every Monday through Friday. This podcast is free. It drops directly to whichever podcasting app you are using. You can watch the show on YouTube, get into the comment section, share your thoughts with me and your fellow Celtics fans. I'm John Karalis, a beat writer covering the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I've been covering this team for about 20 years. I've written a couple of books about them. So I'm here to guide you through this journey. In the second segment, or the third, second and third segments will be kind of a mailbag question about the Celtics. I'm going to take all of that time to answer whether the Celtics can contend without rebuilding. And there's two facets: what the Celtics do and what the league does. So that's going to be those two segments. But I want to start with Brian Windhorst talking about the Celtics, including the Celtics in a discussion about a potential trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's not reporting. I want to make sure that it's clear. He's not reporting that the Celtics are trying to trade for him. He's just saying, and here's the quote: if you have to look at the teams that could make a trade for Giannis that the Bucks would accept, and then on the other side of the trade would have a contending team. Boston would be on that list. He also says some difficulties when you talk about aprons and second aprons and all of that. So let's dissect this because it's going to be difficult. There's one direct way to actually have this happen. If the Celtics wanted to, I don't think they do. Let's not pretend that this is going to happen, but legally, the Celtics can trade Jayson Tatum to Milwaukee because Milwaukee is no longer over the second apron as of right now. Now they have a lot of players that are they need to figure out, and they have cap holds and stuff that they need to figure out. But as of right now, even with the cap holds and all of that, they can make a trade because they're not over the second apron for Jayson Tatum, because he makes $70 more than Giannis. So the Celtics will not be taking back more salary than they're sending out. They're actually taking back less. So they could theoretically trade Tatum for Giannis. This is not going to happen, but they could. If for some reason in their medicals they were like, "Oh God, we got to do this," then sure, it's not impossible. So, but highly improbable. We're not even going to consider that option. More likely, what the Celtics are going to have to do is dip below the second apron. This is where it's going to get tough. They have to still get under the second apron because you're going to want to aggregate salaries. If you're gonna be trading for Giannis, I assume that the Celtics are either they may be trading Jaylen Brown in this deal, or maybe they're trading a ton of picks and they're trying to aggregate some other players, and maybe the Milwaukee Bucks. I guess it depends on what Milwaukee's trying to do. Are they rebuilding or are they trying to retool? If you're trying to retool, then Jaylen Brown would be in the mix. If they're rebuilding, then Porzingis would be in the mix as a expiring contract, and then you take back Hauser and Pritchard and others, and the Celtics would have to aggregate salaries to bring Giannis in. So this goes back to the podcast yesterday. The Celtics, as long as they're under the second apron by the time the deal's done, then they're fine aggregating salaries. I don't know what Milwaukee's going to want back. I'm assuming, judging from the Windhorse quote, a trade for Giannis that the Bucks would accept. I assume that Jaylen Brown would have to be a part of that. I can't imagine that they would just take scrap salaries essentially and try to just, I don't know, tear it down. But I have no idea what the Milwaukee Bucks are trying to do. There are ways around it. It's difficult. The bottom line is it's difficult because not only would the Celtics have to get under the second apron to start aggregating salaries. Remember from yesterday's show, once you aggregate those salaries, you're hard capped at the second apron. So you can't just do whatever plan we had in mind for Drew Holiday. You have to move a couple of other guys. You have to move, and maybe you accomplish that in this trade with Giannis, and you involve a third or a fourth team, and that gets you far enough under to be okay with it. But because you're hard capped, it makes it so you have to get significantly under the second apron. You can't just sneak under it. You have to get under it to a point where you have to make you have to be able to make some moves, right? You have to be able to make subsequent moves. Why do I have trouble saying the word subsequent? You can dip right below the line, but if you need to sign, like you wouldn't be able to sign Cornette, you wouldn't be able to sign Al Horford. You have to be able to, you have to leave enough room to potentially sign somebody, a minimum guy, anything. So it gets messy. Trading for Giannis, Boston trading for Giannis, I believe gets messy unless you include Jaylen Brown. And that's going to be, I think that's my ultimate takeaway. If the Celtics are going to trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo, which I doubt, I think Jaylen Brown's just going to have to be involved. And then they're going to have to expand things out. Like Jaylen plus, I don't know, Jaylen plus not that many picks, for Giannis at this point. Like Giannis is still great and, a MVP, like he was third in the MVP voting. But, like Giannis is starting to, I don't even know how old Giannis is at this point. He is 30 years old. This is tough because, and he turns 31 in December. You're trading for a guy who's still in his prime, but at the tail end of his prime versus Jaylen, who is just entering his prime. There's a little bit of risk involved. Giannis is significantly better than Jaylen because he's a third in MVP voting, and Jaylen is not. Like he's significantly better than Jaylen Brown, but not so much better that it's Brown in a huge haul of picks, and you got to get a bunch of players and make it crazy. Like getting Jaylen Brown in return for Jaylen Brown and some draft capital, and another role player for Giannis at 30, going to be 31. And by the way, Giannis hasn't exactly finished playoffs healthy recently, so there are mitigating factors to trading for him at this point. It's kind of weird to say that Giannis is, talking him in terms of like he's almost 31 and, he plays a hard, driving, attacking style of basketball that tends to wear on your body. I think the Celtics could do it. I don't know that they will, but it's out there. But you have to maneuver. You have to maneuver first. You have to get under the second apron first. That's the only way that they're going to be able to do it, which means prior moves this is not going to be the first move if we get to this point. If we get to this point, I'm couching it a lot. It's going to be a complicated trade. Can I rule it out? No. Celtics found a way. Celtics found a way to make Drew Holiday happen, and I didn't think that was possible. But that was more about guys. Like, I didn't think they were going to trade Rob. I can sit here and say I don't think they're going to trade Jaylen, but they could. They could. Who knows what they could do? And look, the upside is Giannis can be the centerpiece, carrying a team a little bit better than Jaylen can because of the sheer gravity that Giannis demands. I think Giannis can be the heliocentric star that carries a team until Jayson comes back, and then you got two stars like that for a few more years, and then you deal with the aftermath after that. So I can see the Celtics considering it. But, you still run into a lot of the same problems that you have with Jaylen here. It's just Giannis is expensive. Jayson is expensive. It's just that Giannis is a better player. And, he's making 54 next year, 58 and a half the year after, and the almost $63 million player option, where Jaylen is making similar money over those years, and he's not quite the player Giannis is. Now, will Giannis be that player 2-3 years from now? We'll have to see, and you'll have to trust that, 31, 32, 33 it's still not old, that he can still do that. So not out of the question. It's not out of the question. And that would be the reasoning for Boston to move on from Jaylen in this scenario, to bring back a bigger star that can better carry things on his own. And because he's kind of like a big, he can play the 5, or you can play him with Al Horford. Boy, wouldn't that be a pairing? Giannis and Al. What a pairing that would be after their history. But that would be fun. Or Giannis and Luke. I don't know. Who knows? But it's possible. You tell me what you think in the comments. Would you want to trade for Giannis if it costs Jaylen Brown? Let me know, yes or no. And hey, if they do trade for Giannis, I wouldn't mind, because I get to ask my questions in Greek and try to get exclusive answers in scrum situations. So that would be fine for me. But let me know. I don't think it's likely to happen. I don't, but it's possible, and it's not. It gets complicated, but it's not like so complicated that I'm going to rule it out. Which brings us to, can the Celtics contend without a full rebuild? That would be, this would be a real big element to that. We'll get to that in just a second. Today's show is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, playoffs. We got one finals participant. I'm doing this before the Pacers and the Knicks, so we'll see if we get another finals participant. But DoorDash is waiting for one of these guys to score 50, because once they do, you as a Dash Pass member, you better be a Dash Pass member, or you will be after this. You get a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop the very next day. Somebody drops 50 in an NBA game in the NBA Finals, you get a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop with the code Wingstop50 at checkout. This applies the very next day. So if you're having lunch and you want to get a little something extra, if you're having people over or whatever, the day after somebody drops 50, you can just place an order of $20 or more, use the code Wingstop50 at checkout, and you get that 3-piece chicken tenders, crispy tenders combo from Wingstop. Sign up for Dash Pass right now. Unlock this and other exclusive deals all season long. When a player drops 50 in a playoff game, Dash Pass members can grab a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop the next day with a $20 order and a code Wingstop50. That's Dash Pass, your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Terms apply. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Go check out Locked On NBA Game Night. That's going to be me and Jake Madison talking about Knicks Pacers. Are we talking about the NBA Finals? Are we talking about Game 6? I'll find out after I watch that game and talk to you about that on Locked On NBA Game Night. So join me there too, wherever you get your podcasts. So if the Celtics can trade for Giannis, maybe that expands their window. But I'm going to start. This is a question from Bailey on the mailbag. Came in at johnkaralis.com/mailbag. He said, do you think the Celtics have a shot at being true contenders without going through a full rebuild? It took this team being perfectly built to get over the hump after several seasons with teams that will be similar to next season's after several seasons with teams that will be similar to next season's came up short consistently. Okay, I probably copied that in wrong. But bottom line is, the question is, do the Celtics have a shot at being true contenders without going through a full rebuild? So there's two elements to this. Later on, I'll talk about what the league does because that's part of it. But it starts with what Boston does. And look, a trade for Giannis, that could kind of extend this window a little bit. A big swing like that certainly could do it. If you're going to pay big salaries, then you pay the big salaries. And look, you trade for Giannis now, and then in a couple of years, you trade him away to somebody else. And you don't have the same obligation that Milwaukee does. You've traded for him. You get a couple of years out of him. Maybe you get a championship out of him and Tatum. And then you say, okay, move on. You're going to play out your career somewhere else. We'll do our best to accommodate you. But would that count for your question, Bailey? I don't know. I think being contenders is winning another championship. And at some point, you're going to have to go through a rebuild. You're going to have to. You cannot. It is impossible to just continue being a contender or on the fringes forever and ever and ever into perpetuity. It's just we know how things go. Tatum's going to get traded or retire and fade away, and the Celtics are going to have to start over. It's just how it works. So in the grand scheme of things, no, they cannot. But I think what you're asking here is, in the next few years, can they avoid a rebuild while Tatum is still here? And let's throw out they traded for Giannis. I can't believe they did that. Let's look at they're making other deals. Maybe they keep Jaylen. Maybe they trade Jaylen. It's what do the Celtics do to support Jayson? Because Jayson's going to be the one that sticks around. That's how it goes. I'm pretty sure that Jayson's going to be the one that sticks around. So what can they get in these deals for Holiday, Porzingis? How can they draft? What do they get for Jaylen Brown eventually? What do they put around Tatum? Can they find a guy like a Derek White? Now, maybe Derek White doesn't have a whole lot of time left to be what he's been, but can you find another Derek White kind of player out there who's okay in his current situation, but will be better in a Boston situation? That's going to be, I think, the key. And I don't know who that is. Like I mentioned Colin Sexton. I don't know. I have a fondness for him. I know that he's obviously a flawed player, but is there a situation where you can use his competitiveness and kind of harness it a little bit, get some of those edges off his game? And could he be a player that grows into, I don't want to say he's not, because he doesn't play like Derek White, but can he be that kind of impact? Can he have that kind of impact on the team? Is there somebody else out there that you can find on a team? Maybe you get involved as the third or fourth team. Remember, I do believe that the one for one, the one team for one team trades, I think with this collective bargaining agreement, are going to start to fade a little bit. And most of these trades, I think, are going to start filtering into the 2 and 3, the 3 and 4 team trades. I just feel like there's going to have to be a lot of maneuvering to get multiple players out, certain players in, so all 3 teams can kind of can play the game the system, and submit trades that are legal. And there's going to be a lot of third teams, fourth teams that are like, hey, I'll take that very useful player that you have that you need to give up for financial reasons. And, we'll throw in something to make this work, but we'll be that team. I think that's where a front office is going to start really, really earning their money. Can you be that third team, that fourth team in a trade that just says, yeah, man, I got you. I'll take this role player from you that it hurts to give up, but you got to give up something to get something. And then that player goes into, a system with Jayson Tatum and others. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, unlocked something there. That's going to be where the Celtics make their money. The front office makes their money. Now, I don't know specifics, but as you start canvassing the league and going like, okay, these teams are starting to make deals, that's where you start saying, okay, this role player, that player, you're going to find your spots to pick up a guy and enhance your team. So if the Celtics can continue to do that, they can stretch their window of being a top 4 seed into the next few years, right? So maybe not the top seed overall, but 2, 3, 4. You don't have to be crazy to be a 4 seed. Like you can find your way into a 4th seed with Jayson Tatum and some decent players. So that's number 1. That's step 1. Step 2 is the rest of the league. What does the rest of the league look like? I think this collective bargaining agreement, as much as it's tearing down the Celtics, it could make for a softer landing in a weird way. That's next. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Go check out the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast. Rafael Barlow has the draft covered, unlike everyone else. I mean, this is a coverage like Rafael. I've worked with him before, and like he works incredibly hard. He travels the world looking at prospects. He's well worth listening to. I mean, that guy knows his stuff. So check out the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast to get up to speed on everything draft. So answering the question, can the Celtics contend without a full rebuild? Part 2 is the league. And why the league obviously matters is the CBA is tearing everything down. Look at the East. The only other second apron team is the Cleveland Cavaliers. And they may dip over the second apron for a season, another season, but that's it. They're not going to stick over that second apron for very long. And frankly, their playoff exit, I know Boston's was disappointing, but at least the Celtics have a championship. Cleveland's exit was like, whoa, that was bad. Very disappointing. So they'll be willing to play that second apron game for a short time, but not for much longer. So they'll get cut down at some point soon. And who's on the come up? Indy is going to get expensive before you know it. Indy is a small market team. They're not going to be paying a ton of tax for very long. They're not going to be going second apron. So there's going to be a cap on how much better Indy can get. They're going to have to make some tough decisions. Orlando has definite flaws, and they're going to have to figure some things out, and they're starting to get expensive. The teams in the East are there's nobody pulling away right now. There's no one stepping up and being like, as of right now, I'm recording this on May 29th. Maybe by July 2nd, that'll change. But right now, there is no team in the East that is pulling away, running away from the Celtics. And so with some moves, with some decent role players coming in, with Tatum, like if you say next season is a lost season, or, look, next season with Jaylen Brown, let's assume they just keep Jaylen Brown next season. You're still fine. You're still like the Knicks. The Knicks are an expensive team. They're I don't know how much better they're going to get. It'd be interesting to see what moves they make. But the Celtics can be in the mix. And I think when you look around the rest of the league, in the mix is going to be just fine. Seeding eventually is going to be meaningless. The difference between the number 1 seed and the number 6 seed is going to be, if it goes the way the league wants, minuscule, right? They're going to want every team salary-wise to be in a similar spot. So talent-wise, you might have a couple of teams that hit on some players and rise to the top, but also they're not going to be able to spend their way like the Celtics spent and brought in and extended Holiday and White and Pritchard and Hauser and all of these guys. You're not going to see that very often. Those windows are going to be short if they do. So there is, like I said before, a softer landing spot than maybe we realized with this system where, yeah, the Celtics are going to get torn down, but torn down how? To the middle? To the lower end of contending? So to answer this question from Bailey, can the Celtics be true contenders without going through a full rebuild? I don't know that. I don't think they can build a team at this point that the league looks at and says, oh, that's it. That's the team. That's the team to beat. I think those days are over. Can the Celtics be in that tier below where you go, yeah, maybe more than a puncher's chance, somewhere between puncher's chance and a lock? What's in between there? That's where the Celtics, I think, can live for a little while. A lot of this obviously depends on Jayson Tatum's recovery. If that recovery doesn't go well and he's a shell of himself, then that changes a lot, obviously. But I'm assuming that he's going to come back and be himself at some point. If it's next season, great. If it's not, then doesn't matter. But as long as he comes back and is himself, then that's fine. I think the Celtics can be a contender, but not the favorite. I think they can be in the mix, but not a team where everybody looks at and says, okay, the consensus is Celtics easy. So, but there are a lot of moving parts. All right. Thanks everybody for listening, for watching. I appreciate you doing so. Monday, this is the Friday show. So Monday, Mailbag Monday, I'm going to get back to the mailbag, johnkaralis.com/mailbag, unless something monumental happens, but Mailbag Monday, for now, johnkaralis.com/mailbag. Get your questions in. I'll answer them on Monday. So make sure you're subscribed, watch the show on YouTube, get into the comment section, share your thoughts there, become an everydayer. Join me on this journey every Monday through Friday. Would love to have you with me and all the other everydayers. It's a fun ride. And so thanks everybody for doing so. And thank you for sharing the podcast and telling everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.